The moon hung low over the horizon, casting an eerie glow across the desolate battlefield. Ethan's breath was ragged, each inhale sharp, as if the very air he was drawing was infused with the weight of the moment. His hands trembled slightly as he gripped the hilt of his weapon, the alien blade that had helped him defeat Korath, the ruthless leader of the Zilthian Empire. The field was silent now, save for the faint crackling of the dying energy shields surrounding the remains of the battlefield. Ethan stood alone, his figure framed against the shattered remnants of the Zilthian war machines, their once imposing forms now reduced to twisted metal and fire. He could feel the exhaustion in his bones, the deep ache of battle still pulsing through his limbs, but he had done it. He had defeated Korath, the alien tyrant who had wreaked havoc across the galaxy, whose army had decimated entire civilizations, was now nothing more than a corpse lying in the dirt. He let out a shaky exhale, allowing himself a moment of triumph. The echoes of battle reverberated through his mind, but he could barely feel the sting of the wounds he had sustained. The weight of victory was heavy, but it was a burden he would carry with pride. Korath was dead. The galaxy had been saved. And yet, something felt wrong. "Victory," he muttered to himself, his voice a hoarse whisper, but his words felt hollow, empty. The adrenaline was starting to fade, and as it did, a gnawing unease settled into his chest. Something was off. Behind him, the air shimmered. Ethan spun, his instincts still sharp despite the fatigue. From the haze, a figure emerged. A tall, regal alien with skin as dark as the void of space, their eyes glowing with an unsettling pale light. Ethan's hand instinctively went to the weapon at his side, but the alien raised a hand, halting him. "You are victorious, Earthling," the alien spoke, its voice cold and devoid of warmth. "But the law demands its price." Ethan's brow furrowed in confusion. "What law?" "The law of the Zilthian Empire," the alien replied, stepping forward with an air of authority. "It dictates that upon the defeat of a leader, his chosen companions must be given to the victor, to serve as a reminder of their submission. You, Ethan of Earth, are now the husband of Korath's 3 wives. The words hit him like a physical blow, the shock coursing through him in waves. "What? No, that can't be right. I didn't sign up for this." The alien didn't flinch. "It is not a matter of choice. It is the law. You have defeated Korath. Now you must take his wives as your own. It is the price of victory." Ethan's head was spinning. His thoughts raced. This couldn't be happening. He had come to the battlefield as a soldier, a warrior, but he had never expected this, never even considered it. The idea of taking Korath's wives, alien women who had once been part of his enemy's inner circle, was unfathomable. "You're telling me that the law forces me to—" he stammered, struggling to wrap his mind around the situation. The alien's cold gaze never wavered. "Yes, you must take them as your own. It is an obligation, a law enforced by the highest authority of the Zilthian Empire. Refuse, and you will be seen as a violator of the code. That, Earthling, would be your undoing." Ethan clenched his fists, feeling the surge of anger rise within him. "I didn't ask for this. I came here to end Korath's reign, not to be forced into some alien marriage." The alien's expression remained stoic, showing no sign of emotion. "The law is clear. You have no choice in the matter. If you refuse, the consequences will be dire, not just for you, but for your people. The Zilthian Empire does not tolerate defiance. You will be branded as an enemy of the Empire, and the galaxy will turn against you." The weight of the alien's words settled over him like a leaden cloak. Ethan's thoughts scrambled for a way out. This wasn't part of the plan. He had been part of a coalition of forces, working together to bring down Korath's tyranny. But this was something he had never prepared for. He turned his gaze back to the battlefield, his eyes falling on the body of Korath, who lay unmoving in the dirt. The alien leader, once a formidable force, was nothing more than a symbol of the past now. Yet the law of the Zilthians was not something that could simply be dismissed. It was clear that this was far more than just an unwanted obligation. This was a power play, an intricate web of politics that was now tangled around him. "You said there's no choice," Ethan said, his voice tight with frustration. "Then tell me, what happens if I don't comply?" The alien stepped closer, its eyes narrowing slightly. "You will bring destruction upon your people, and you will never be allowed to leave this world. Your Earth will be wiped from existence, erased as if it had never been. The consequences of defying the Empire are severe. No one defies the Zilthian laws and survives." Ethan felt his stomach drop. He had seen the devastation that Korath's army had left in its wake. He had fought alongside his fellow soldiers to stop that very thing from happening. Now, standing on the edge of victory, he was faced with a choice that could change the fate of not only his own people, but the entire galaxy. The alien raised its hand, motioning toward the horizon. "The wives are waiting. They will accompany you back to your ship. You will take them with you, or you will face the consequences." Ethan's heart raced, his mind a whirlwind of emotions. He had never been one to back down from a fight. He had faced down enemies far worse than this, had been in impossible situations before. But this was different. Taking Korath's wives wasn't just about the law. It wasn't even about the galaxy. It was about something more personal, more visceral. He couldn't deny the feelings of disgust rising within him, but there was also the gnawing reality that he had no other option. He was being forced into a situation he never could have imagined. He took a deep breath, his mind racing through the possibilities. There had to be another way. There had to be something he could do. But for now, he was left with only one truth. He had no choice but to comply. "I'll take them," he said, his voice strained but resolute. "But know this, I don't like it. I don't agree with it. And I will find a way to end this, to break this law, if it's the last thing I do." The alien gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. "You may not have a choice now, but you will have to learn to accept your new reality, Earthling. The law will guide you, whether you like it or not." With that, the alien turned, motioning for Ethan to follow. Ethan hesitated for only a moment. Before he did, walking toward the waiting ship where Korath's 3 wives stood, silent and watchful. The first step of his new journey had begun, and as he walked toward the unknown, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a much darker story. Cliffhanger. As Ethan stepped onto the ship, the wives, Zira, Ilara, and Varia, did not greet him with warmth or gratitude. Their eyes were cold, distant, as though they were as trapped in this fate as he was. Ethan glanced over his shoulder, seeing the battlefield one last time. But just before the doors to the ship closed, a voice, low and ominous, echoed in his. "Mind, you have no idea what you've just stepped into." The doors slammed shut. The hum of the ship's engines filled the air as Ethan stood silently, the weight of his new reality pressing down on him. The door slid shut with a soft hiss, and the barren battlefield outside disappeared behind him as the ship began its slow ascent into the sky. For a moment, he just stared at the control panel in front of him, the cool metallic surface of the cockpit surrounding him like a cold cage. He felt trapped, suffocated by the gravity of his situation. The 3 wives stood in the shadows, silent, unmoving. Zira, Ilara, and Varia. Each of them was distinct in her alien beauty, tall, lithe figures with skin that shimmered faintly in the dim light, their eyes glowing faintly, almost unnervingly. But despite their otherworldly allure, there was no warmth in their gazes. They didn't look at him with gratitude or even with hatred, just indifference. It was as if they were simply resigned to their fate. Ethan shifted uncomfortably, trying to shake off the feeling of being watched. of being judged. He had expected resistance. After all, these were the wives of a tyrant, women who had been forced into their positions as much as he had been forced into his new role. But their silence was worse. It made him feel like he was nothing more than a piece in a game that had already been played out. And no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't escape the nagging feeling that he was in way over his head. He finally turned to face them, his voice rough from the weight of his thoughts. What happens now? Zyra, the tallest and most striking of the three, was the first to speak. Her voice was calm, measured, yet there was an underlying tension in it, like a string pulled too tight. Now, you will take us to your world. That is what the law dictates. Your victory, your obligation. Ethan clenched his jaw, frustrated at the lack of explanation. I get that. But what does that mean for you? For us? What do you expect from me? Ilara, the one with darker skin and sharper features, stepped forward, her eyes locked onto his. We expect nothing, she said, her voice colder than he had anticipated. We are bound by the same law that has bound you. We are prisoners, just as you are. Varia, the quietest of the three, watched him with an intensity that sent a chill through his spine. Her gaze was filled with something unsettling, though it wasn't fear, more like curiosity or perhaps pity. But there was also something else, a darkness in her eyes that made Ethan uneasy. Then why don't you fight back? Ethan asked, though he was already beginning to know the answer. You're not helpless. You could... We've tried, Zyra interrupted, her voice firm, cutting through his words. We've all tried. But the law is not something that can be easily broken. It's ancient, binding, a part of our culture. We don't have the power to defy it. Ethan let out a frustrated breath, his mind racing. This was madness. He had just defeated the leader of the Zilthian Empire, and now he was supposed to live out some twisted contract that forced him to marry these women. But it wasn't just the law that weighed on him. It was the fact that he didn't know what the consequences would be if he didn't comply. His mind kept returning to that warning the alien had given him. The consequences will be dire. As the ship cut through the sky, heading toward Earth, Ethan knew he was trapped. He couldn't go back. There was no going back. And the more he thought about it, the more the reality of the situation set in. He wasn't just dealing with a personal obligation. He was now the center of an intergalactic power play. His every move would be watched, his every decision scrutinized by the forces that ruled this empire. He glanced at the wives again. They were still silent, waiting, but Ethan knew he couldn't keep his questions to himself any longer. What happens when we get to Earth? He asked, his voice low. What will I do with you then? Zyra tilted her head slightly, her eyes narrowing as if she was weighing his words carefully. You will take us to the authorities. They will be forced to acknowledge your new position, your rights over us. It's the law. It's not negotiable. And if I decide not to follow through with this arrangement, Ethan pressed, his voice growing more insistent, then the law will come for you, Ilara said simply. Her words were sharp, final. And they will come for your world as well. The consequences will be severe, not just for you, but for all of humanity. Ethan clenched his fists, his mind racing. There had to be a way out of this. There had to be a loophole, a weakness in this law that could allow him to fight back. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized that his options were limited. He could comply, go along with the law and hope for the best. Or he could refuse and risk everything he had fought for. A wave of frustration washed over him, and he let out a long breath. So I'm just supposed to accept this. No questions, no fight. You can fight, Zyra said softly, almost as if she were offering him a comfort. But it won't change anything. This is the way it has always been. The way it will always be. The law is immutable. Ethan slumped into the seat, his head spinning. The ship was still climbing, the stars outside growing more distant with each passing second. He felt like he was falling into a void, a dark space where nothing was real anymore. His thoughts were all over the place, swirling with anger, confusion, and disbelief. The wives were still there, standing like statues. He wanted to ask them more questions, to know what they were thinking, but he didn't. He couldn't. It didn't matter. They were just as trapped as he was. For hours, they traveled through the void of space, the silence between them growing more oppressive with each passing minute. Ethan tried to think of a way to break the tension, but his mind kept returning. To the same thought, there was no escape. He was stuck in this nightmare, and there was no one who could help him. Finally, the voice of the ship's AI broke through the silence, its calm, mechanical tone a stark contrast to the chaos in Ethan's mind. "We are approaching Earth's atmosphere. Please prepare for re-entry." Ethan blinked, his mind snapping back to the present. Earth, his home, the place he had fought so hard to protect. He glanced at the wives again, wondering what kind of world they would be entering, what kind of life they would expect to have on Earth. He didn't know what to expect anymore. He didn't know anything. As the ship descended toward the planet's surface, the tension in the air was palpable. The wives stood still as if in waiting, and Ethan, he didn't know what to do. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about humanity. It was about the law that governed this galaxy, a law that he had just become a part of. The ship broke through the atmosphere, the surface of Earth coming into view, and as Ethan watched the familiar landscape of his home planet grow larger and larger, a new wave of uncertainty gripped him. The journey was far from over. Cliffhanger. As the ship touched down on Earth, a figure appeared on the landing platform. A government official, flanked by armed guards, stood waiting. The moment the ship doors opened, the official's gaze locked onto Ethan with an intensity that made his blood run cold. "You've returned with much more than you bargained for," the official said, his voice laced with both curiosity and concern. "What exactly is going on here, Captain?" The door to the ship slid open. The platform was silent. The winds were calm, the moonlight cutting through the shadows of the city like a knife. Earth was no longer the place of safety and stability it once was. Now it felt foreign, distant, disconnected. Ethan stood still, trying to steady his breath as the metal door of the ship hissed open, revealing the waiting official and his entourage. The trio of alien wives stood motionless, their faces unreadable. Zyra, Ilara, and Varia, his wives, according to the law. Ethan couldn't even look at them now without feeling a bitter taste in his mouth. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. He had fought and bled to protect his home, and now he was walking into a nightmare that would change the course of humanity's future forever. The official, dressed in a military uniform adorned with gold trimmings and the insignia of the United Earth Council, stepped forward, his face a mask of professionalism. His eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned Ethan with an unnerving precision. He had the air of someone who had seen far too many battles, someone who had been through the darkest parts of human history and come out the other side unscathed. And yet, Ethan could see the flicker of concern in his eyes, a flicker that made him uneasy. Ethan straightened his back, trying to retain some semblance of control over the situation. He had no idea what this would mean for the future, but he wasn't about to let his personal confusion get in the way of humanity's survival. He had a responsibility, one he had never signed up for, but one that he couldn't ignore. The official didn't speak at first. He simply watched him, sizing him up. Ethan hated the feeling of being scrutinized like this, but he held his ground. "Captain, I presume?" The official finally spoke, his voice low and controlled, like he was speaking to someone who had already proven their worth. "You've come a long way." Yeah, Ethan said, his voice tight, and I'm guessing you already know why. The official's gaze flicked briefly to the three alien women, then back to Ethan. He nodded once. I do. But I need you to understand something, Captain. You're not just returning from a military campaign. You've just become part of something. Far bigger than you, far bigger than any of us. Ethan clenched his fists. I'm aware of that, but right now I'm more concerned about the next steps. What happens now? What happens to them? He gestured toward the three women, his voice laced with frustration. He hated feeling helpless. The official's face remained unreadable, though his lips tightened just slightly. What happens next is that you will comply with the law of the Zilthian Empire. This is no longer just about you. You've entered into an intergalactic contract, Captain. You've won a battle, but the consequences are far-reaching. Zyra stepped forward, her graceful movement a stark contrast to Ethan's harsh words. Her eyes met the official's with a cold calculation, and then she turned to Ethan. We are your responsibility now, she said, her voice almost too soft to hear. You must take us to the council. Only they can validate your marriage to us, and only then will the law be properly fulfilled. Ethan shook his head, disbelief mounting. Wait, what do you mean by validate? What does this marriage even mean? What am I supposed to do with you? This isn't just about signing a piece of paper, is it? The official stepped forward, his face still expressionless, but his voice now carrying the weight of authority. No, Captain, it's not just a formality. The Zilthian Empire has laws that govern the balance of power between its species, and the marriage contract you've entered into is legally binding, both on Earth and in Zilthian space. You are now a legal guardian, a ruler of sorts. You must maintain this bond for the rest of your life. If you break it, the consequences could be catastrophic, not just for you, but for Earth. Ethan took a step back, the gravity of his situation sinking in like a boulder. His mind raced. What was he supposed to do? How could he navigate this mess? He had just fought a war. He had faced the greatest enemy humanity had ever known, and now he was supposed to become a political figure in some intergalactic game he didn't even understand. The overwhelming weight of it all made his head spin. Catastrophic? Ethan echoed, his voice a mixture of confusion and anger. What are you talking about? How could this affect Earth? How could this affect my world? The official's eyes grew colder. Do you think the Zilthians are the only species with this kind of power, Captain? Do you think this marriage is simply about tradition or some absurd legal contract? This is a power play, a statement from the Zilthian Empire that they control not just their own people, but now humanity as well. If you don't comply, the Empire will come for you. And it will come for your entire species. This isn't just a law, it's a message. Humanity's place in the galactic order has already been decided. Ethan felt his stomach twist. The thought of it was almost too much to bear. His entire life, everything he had known, was suddenly upended. He had become a pawn in a game he hadn't even known existed, and now he had to play by the rules of beings whose motives he couldn't even begin to fathom. What do you want from me? Ethan asked, his voice now tinged with desperation. What do you want me to do? I didn't ask for this. None of us did. The official's gaze softened slightly, though his tone remained firm. The council will guide you, Captain. You will submit to their judgment, and you will comply with their wishes, as will these women. This is your obligation now, your duty, and it's one that can't be avoided. Ethan turned to the three women, their faces still unreadable. What were they thinking? What was going through their minds? They had no choice in this, no say in their fate. They were just as trapped as he was. He could feel the weight of their gaze on him, but he couldn't read them, couldn't understand them. Zyra's voice broke through his thoughts. You do not have to like this, she said quietly, but you must accept it. The Empire does not tolerate disobedience, and neither do we. Ethan wanted to argue, wanted to scream, but he knew there was no point. There was nothing he could do to change this. The laws of the Zilthians were set in stone, and no one could break them, not without incurring the wrath of an entire empire. The official stepped back, as if satisfied with his explanation. "Now, Captain," he said, "you will follow me. The council awaits you. It's time for you to meet your future, and theirs." Ethan's mind swirled. He had no choice but to comply. There was no escape. As the group moved toward the transport vehicles waiting in the distance, the cold realization hit him. This wasn't just about his marriage to 3 alien women. This was about a power struggle that could change the course of history, and he was right in the center of it. Cliffhanger. As they approached the transport, the official turned to him. "One last time. I trust you understand the gravity of your situation, Captain. The Council is not known for its patience. You will be judged accordingly." Ethan looked at the official, the weight of those words sinking deep into his chest. This was no longer just about surviving. It was about navigating a world where nothing was as it seemed, and where every decision could either save or doom humanity. The transport ride to the Zilthian capital was suffocating. Ethan couldn't shake the feeling of being trapped. No, not trapped, but bound. The laws, the obligations, the strange new world he was now part of, all weighed down on him like an unyielding chain. He sat in the back of the transport, his hands clenched into fists, staring out the reinforced window at the alien landscape unfolding below. The barren landscapes of the alien planet stretched out, covered in jagged rock formations and strange bioluminescent flora. Everything was alien, unfamiliar. The sky overhead was a mixture of violet and deep blue, with stars too bright to ignore, giving the planet an ethereal glow. But nothing about this world felt beautiful or welcoming. It felt cold, hostile even. Zira, Ilara, and Varia sat silently. Beside him, their eyes lowered. Despite their alien beauty, Ethan could feel the discomfort radiating from them, and it mirrored his own. The bond that had been forced upon them wasn't just a political maneuver, it was an emotional trap as well. Zira had barely spoken since the initial meeting with the official. She hadn't said much beyond the required phrases during their brief encounter, and her silence now felt like a form of punishment. Ethan wasn't sure what to make of it. She wasn't the same person who had once confidently negotiated with him on the battlefield. Now she appeared almost defeated. He glanced at Ilara, who sat rigidly with her hands folded neatly on her lap, her posture perfect in a way that felt more military than personal. Her face was a mask of stoic resignation, but beneath it, he could feel something stirring. A sense of anger, fear, or was it simply confusion, just like him? Varia, the youngest of the 3, was the most unpredictable. She had been quiet throughout the journey, her wide eyes occasionally flickering toward Ethan with an unreadable expression. She seemed to hold her emotions in check, but there was an undeniable tension in her body, as if she were waiting for something, perhaps for Ethan to make the first move. Despite his frustration, Ethan couldn't deny the strange connection he felt with them. They were his wives now, bound by a law they didn't understand any more than he did. And yet, they had no choice, just as he had no choice. The transport jerked to a halt, pulling him from his thoughts. The doors hissed open, and a cold gust of alien air swept into the cabin, carrying with it the unmistakable scent of metal and ozone. This wasn't Earth. He didn't belong here. The official led the way, motioning for them to follow him. As Ethan stepped off the transport, the first thing he noticed was the towering structure before him, the council's building, if it could even be called a building. It was more like a fortress, made of dark stone and organic materials that pulsed with an eerie glow. It didn't feel like a place of judgment, it felt like a place of imprisonment. As they entered the building, Ethan felt a tightening in his chest. The walls seemed to pulse with energy, the air thick with tension. He had been in war zones, he had fought battles, but this was different. This felt like something he couldn't escape, no matter how hard he tried. Inside, the corridors were dimly lit, the walls adorned with strange symbols and holographic displays. They were led down winding hallways, each one more unfamiliar than the last. At the end of the long corridor, they arrived at a massive chamber, a circular room with a high, domed ceiling that was covered in intricate patterns. In the center of the room stood a raised platform, surrounded by an assortment of chairs and seating arrangements. It was clear that this was a place of great significance, and Ethan could feel the weight of its history pressing down on him. This was where everything would be decided. A figure stood at the center of the platform, cloaked in robes of shimmering silver. The being had no visible face, only a pair of glowing eyes that seemed to bore into Ethan's soul. This was the Council, its leader, the one who would decide his fate and the fate of his wives. The official gestured for them to step forward. "Captain Ethan Ryder, the Earth's representative," he announced in a tone that carried an air of finality. "The 3 alien women you have taken under your protection, Zira, Ilara, and Varia, are bound by your decision. Their lives, their futures, and your own are now entwined. The Council will judge your actions and your willingness to accept this responsibility." Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. His mind raced. He had no idea what was going to happen here. The Council's judgment was final, and it would be up to them whether he would return to Earth or be left stranded in this alien world forever, bound by laws he didn't understand. "Do not mistake our judgment for mercy, Captain," a voice boomed from the shadows, and a figure stepped forward. This one was different, a towering being with 6 arms, each adorned with intricate tattoos that glowed faintly in the dim light. The creature's eyes were a piercing red, and its voice held an authority that sent chills down Ethan's spine. "Your victory over the Zilthian leader was a remarkable achievement," the being continued, "but it does not exempt you from the consequences of your actions. You have entered into a contract, one that binds you not just to these women, but to the fate of your planet as well." Ethan swallowed hard. This was it. There was no going back now. The figure turned to the 3 women who were standing in silence behind him. "Zira, Ilara, Varia, you are here by choice, but it is the law that governs your place in this world. You are bound to this human, whether you desire it or not. The question now is whether you are willing to accept this bond for the sake of your survival and the survival of your people." Ethan couldn't help but glance at the 3 women. He saw the fear in their eyes, the uncertainty. It was as if they too were waiting for some kind of validation from him, some sign that they were more than just pawns in this alien game. Zira was the first to speak, her voice surprisingly steady. "We accept our place here, Captain. We accept the law, for it is the only path to survival." Ilara followed suit, her voice colder but no less resolute. "We have no choice. This is the way it must be." Varia, ever the quiet one, glanced at Ethan with a mixture of fear and hope in her eyes. "We will do what is necessary," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The Council's leader nodded slowly, as if weighing their words. "Very well. The bond is accepted. But remember, Captain, this is not just a legal obligation. It is an emotional one. You are now responsible for the lives of these women, and you will face the consequences of your actions if you fail." Ethan nodded, though the weight of those words pressed down on him like 1,000 tons. The stakes had just been raised, and there was no turning back. "Your marriage, Captain," the Council leader continued, "will be validated by our law, but it will also be a political statement, Earth is now officially part of the Zilthian Empire. You will be an ambassador, a symbol of unity between our species. Your actions, both on Earth and here, will define the future of your planet. Ethan's heart pounded harder. An ambassador? A symbol? This was more than he could handle. The weight of the responsibility, the pressure to succeed, to protect these women and humanity's future. It felt suffocating. But it was clear. This was no longer just about surviving. It was about shaping the future of two species, Earth and the Zilthians, and it was all on his shoulders. Cliffhanger. As the council leader's voice faded into the silence of the room, a chilling thought struck Ethan. What if they didn't just want him to succeed? What if failure meant more than just his death? What if Earth itself was at risk? Ethan sat alone in his quarters, the sterile, alien environment pressing in around him. The walls, sleek and metallic, hummed softly, as if alive with some hidden energy. Despite the quiet, it felt as though the room was suffocating him. Every breath he took filled with the weight of his responsibilities, his emotions tangled and torn. The truth that had been laid out for him was beginning to settle in, and it felt like he was drowning in it. The council had decreed that he was now the ambassador between Earth and the Zilthians. But what did that really mean? He had no answers. He had been thrust into a role he never asked for, forced to make decisions that carried the weight of two worlds. And at the center of it all, there were Zira, Ilara, and Varia, his three wives, bound to him by law, each of them carrying their own pain, their own secrets. Zira's coldness toward him still haunted him. After their initial agreement to the bond, she had remained distant, barely acknowledging his presence unless necessary. Her eyes, once fierce and full of determination, now seemed haunted, as if they were hiding something. It unsettled him, made him wonder if she was waiting for some sort of redemption, or if she had already given up. Ilara, on the other hand, was a force of stoic professionalism. Her reserved demeanor was almost suffocating, and yet he couldn't shake the feeling that beneath her composed surface there was a depth of emotion she wasn't willing to show. Every time he looked at her, it was as if she were silently calculating every action, every word, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal herself. And then there was Varia, the youngest of the three. She had always been the most unpredictable, her emotions sometimes bubbling to the surface in unexpected ways. But in the days since their arrival at the council's capital, she had grown quieter, more withdrawn. Ethan couldn't help but wonder if she was truly ready for the role she had been forced into, or if she was just pretending to go along with it all. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration mounting as the silence pressed in. He had no idea what he was supposed to do, no idea how to navigate the politics of this alien world or the tangled mess of emotions between himself and his wives. There was no manual for this. There was no one to help him. The door slid open suddenly, and Ethan's eyes snapped up. Zira stood in the doorway, her tall, imposing figure framed by the soft light of the hallway. Her dark eyes locked with his, and for a moment there was nothing but silence. "I need to talk to you," she said quietly, her voice carrying an edge of something he couldn't quite place. Ethan stood up, heart pounding. "What is it?" Zira stepped inside, her gaze shifting briefly to the floor before she looked back at him, a flicker of vulnerability crossing her face. "You need to understand something," she said, her words heavy with meaning. "The law that binds us isn't just about politics. It's not just about the Zilthians or Earth. It's about survival." He frowned. "Survival? What do you mean?" She hesitated, her eyes darting around the room as if ensuring no one else was listening. "There's something the council isn't telling you," she said softly. "Something they never told us." Ethan's stomach tightened. "What are you talking about?" Zira took a step closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "The bond. It's not just a law, it's a weapon, a way for the Council to control us, to control you. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. What are you saying? They forced us into this marriage, but they don't just want our allegiance? Zyra nodded slowly, her expression hardening. The Council has its own agenda, and this marriage is part of it. They're using us, using you, as pawns in a larger game, and they will not hesitate to destroy us if we become a threat to their power. Ethan's mind raced. But I thought, everything they've told you is a lie, Zyra interrupted. We're not here to be part of some political union between Earth and the Zilthians. We're here because they need us. They need you. Ethan took a step back, the weight of her words sinking in. Why didn't you say something sooner? He asked, anger and frustration rising in his chest. Why keep this from me? Zyra's face softened, but her eyes remained full of pain. We didn't have a choice. We were given no options. The law forced us into this position. The Council's orders are absolute. A sinking feeling spread through Ethan's chest. What happens if we refuse? If we try to fight this? Zyra's face grew darker. If we refuse, they'll destroy us. They'll wipe us out, and they'll use you as a scapegoat. You'll never return to Earth, and your planet will be left to deal with the consequences. Ethan's heart sank as the full scope of the situation became clear. He wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. He was caught in a web of manipulation, a struggle for power that was far bigger than he had realized. The Council wasn't just interested in controlling his actions, they wanted to control Earth's future as well. And if they could use him to do that, they would. The door slid open again, and Ilara stepped in, her posture as rigid as ever. She glanced between the two of them, her expression unreadable. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice low but commanding. Zyra turned to face her, her eyes cold. "We need to talk about what the Council is really doing." Ilara's gaze flickered to Ethan, then back to Zyra. "I figured as much," she said quietly. "It's not just politics, is it? There's something more." Ethan took a deep breath, trying to process everything he had just learned. "What's the real reason they wanted me here? Why me?" Ilara's eyes softened just slightly before she spoke. "Because you're human. Because you're different. The Council believes that by using you, they can secure the future of both Earth and the Zilthians, but what they don't realize is that they're playing a dangerous game, and we're all part of it." The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fall into place, but the bigger picture still eluded him. Why did the Council believe Earth's future was so crucial to their own survival? And why was he, a mere soldier, chosen to be the one to make the decisions? Varia appeared in the doorway now, her pale face drawn, her eyes shadowed with worry. She glanced between the three of them, her voice barely above a whisper. "What do we do now?" Zyra, Ilara, and Ethan shared a long, loaded glance, each of them knowing that their choices from here on out would shape not only their future, but the future of humanity itself. And the stakes were higher than any of them had ever imagined. As they gathered around the table, the weight of their decisions pressed down on them. Ethan felt a cold dread in his chest as he realized the extent of what was at stake. If the Council had its way, the fragile peace between Earth and the Zilthians would soon unravel. They would be forced to play along. But Ethan wasn't sure how much longer he could pretend that this was a game he was willing to play. The silence in the room thickened, each of them lost in their thoughts, until finally Zyra spoke. "We need to find out the truth. We need to uncover what the Council is really planning, and we need to stop it before it's too late." And just as the words left her lips, a loud crash echoed from the hallway, followed by hurried footsteps. The door burst open, revealing a figure clad in dark armor. "We don't have much time," the figure said, stepping into the room. "The Council is already making their move." Cliffhanger. As the figure stepped forward, Ethan's heart skipped a beat. The voice was familiar, but the face was hidden behind a dark helmet. Who was this? And why did it feel like everything he had fought for was about to be torn apart? The room was heavy with tension. Ethan's mind was racing, trying to process everything that had happened, everything that was still unfolding. The figure standing in the doorway, clad in dark armor, made no move to reveal their identity. The footsteps outside had fallen silent, and the once soft hum of the alien ship had become deafening. In this moment, everything felt like it was about to spiral out of control. Zira, Ilara, and Varia all turned toward the stranger, their expressions tense. The air between them was thick with uncertainty and unspoken questions. Ethan's heart raced as he tried to decipher the situation. Who was this? And why did it feel like they were all standing on the edge of something vast, something terrifying? The figure stepped forward, their armored boots clicking against the metal floor. Slowly, they lifted their helmet, revealing a face that Ethan recognized all too well. Commander Zayla, the very officer who had been responsible for overseeing the marriage bond between himself and the 3 Zilthian women. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. Zayla? Zayla's expression was hard to read, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes. Fear, perhaps. He didn't speak immediately, instead locking eyes with Ethan as if measuring the gravity of the moment. Finally, he spoke. His voice low and tense. "It's worse than you think." Ethan stepped forward, narrowing his gaze. "What do you mean? What's going on?" Zayla hesitated for a moment before speaking again. "The Council, they've already begun executing their final plan. They've set things in motion and nothing will stop them now. Earth's fate is sealed." Ethan's stomach churned. He could feel the weight of the situation crushing him, but he couldn't afford to break. Not now. "What is the plan? What are they doing?" Zayla took a step closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "They've been planning this for years, and you've only just stumbled onto the edges of it. The Zilthians, they're not what you think. They were never meant to be allies. They were meant to control you." The words hit Ethan like a blow to the chest. "What?" he gasped. "How?" Zayla's eyes were filled with something. Regret? Guilt? "The Zilthian people are ruled by an elite caste. The Council is just a puppet for a much darker power. The bond you share with Zyra, Ilara, and Varia, it was always intended to keep Earth in line, to ensure that you never resisted the Zilthians' dominance." Ethan's mind reeled. "So, it's all a trap? Everything?" Zaylor nodded grimly. "Yes. Earth's inclusion in the Zilthian Empire was never meant to be an alliance. You were chosen to be controlled. Your marriages, your role here, it was all set up to make sure the Zilthians could manipulate Earth's resources and people at will." Zyra stepped forward, her voice shaky with emotion. "You're lying. The Council would never do that. They can't—" "I wish I were lying," Zayla interrupted, his voice soft with sorrow. "But I'm not. The truth is that the Zilthian leadership has always seen themselves as superior to other species. Earth was just a convenient tool in their quest for power. They've been systematically infiltrating your systems, controlling everything from behind the scenes." Ethan felt his heart race, his blood running cold. He turned to look at the 3 women, Zira, Ilara, and Varia. What did this mean for them? Had they been used all along? Zira's expression was a mask of confusion and anger. "How do we stop them then? What do we do now?" Zayla glanced toward the door as if making sure no one else was listening. "We can't stop them directly," he said quietly, "but we can disrupt their plans. The Council has already initiated the final phase of their operation, an operation that will force Earth to bend to their will. It's already begun. But there's one thing they didn't account for." Ethan took a step forward, trying to make sense of it all. What didn't they account for? Zayla's gaze flicked to the 3 women, then back to Ethan. "They didn't account for you. They didn't account for your humanity." Ethan's mind raced, his body instinctively bracing for whatever came next. "What are you saying? How does that help us?" Zayla looked him in the eye. "You are the key. You, together with Zyra, Ilara, and Varia, are the only ones who can break the chain that the Council has built. They've underestimated human resolve. They thought they could control you through this marriage, through the bond, but they didn't realize that humans don't just follow orders. They fight for what they believe in." Ethan felt a spark of hope flicker inside him, but it was quickly smothered by the weight of his doubts. "What do we have to do? What's the plan?" Zayla's voice dropped to a whisper. "There's a device, the catalyst, hidden within the heart of the Zilthian capital. It's what they've been using to control the entire system. If you can destroy it, you'll break their hold on both Earth and the Zilthians. But it won't be easy. The catalyst is well guarded, and once you start this, there's no turning back." The gravity of the situation settled like a stone in Ethan's stomach. They were going to have to risk everything. The fate of Earth. And the Zilthian people would hang in the balance. "We'll do it," Zira said firmly, stepping forward. "We're in this together." Ethan turned to her, his heart aching with the weight of her words. There was so much they didn't know, so much they hadn't shared, but now none of that mattered. They were going to fight together, no matter. "The cost," Ilara nodded. "We have to. It's the only way." Varia, her voice trembling but determined, added, "We don't have a choice. We have to stop them." The four of them stood there, their futures uncertain, but the resolve between them was palpable. The Zilthians may have thought they had everything under control, but they had underestimated humanity, underestimated the strength of their will. Ethan knew that this was their chance to prove it. But as they began to make their preparations, an unsettling thought crossed Ethan's mind. Was this really the right thing to do? If they destroyed the catalyst, would the Zilthians retaliate in ways that would leave Earth even more vulnerable? There was no way to know for sure. But he knew one thing for certain. This was their only shot. As they left the room, the weight of the mission ahead of them pressed down on their shoulders. But Ethan wasn't afraid. He was ready to fight, ready to take back control, ready to prove that humanity would never be controlled, never be subjugated. They moved swiftly through the corridors toward the heart of the Zilthian capital. Every step felt like it could be their last, but none of them hesitated. The fate of their worlds was in their hands, and as they neared their destination, the sound of a door opening behind them froze them in their tracks. The voice that spoke from the shadows was familiar and chilling. "You really think you can stop us?" Cliffhanger. The voice came from behind them, and as they turned, the figure emerging from the darkness was one Ethan never thought he would see again. It was a face he recognized all too well. A face that had once been an ally, now a traitor.